Dogen talks about our zazen, which is to say our practice, as the Dharma gate of joy and ease, which it is, but not necessarily in quite the way we might imagine that. How do we see our practice ongoing? Where's it going? How is that? How should that be? Joy and ease. Do we see that as sitting on a mountaintop, permanently blissed out? Or like some martial arts movie, effortlessly moving through a sea of opponents over my shoulder, block, perfectly commanding? Or do I see it like Star Trek, an infinite journey, ever out, ever farther, whether we see that as to the fringes of the universe or deep, deep, deep within myself, higher levels of consciousness, whatever, ongoing, forever. But maybe joy and ease has to include being uncomfortable. We know that our resistance to our life as it is really the starting point and the cornerstone of our ordinary mind practice. So the question becomes, in a sense, how are we with our resistance, and do we imagine some perfect state in which it's just gone away, evaporated, we've processed, we've practiced, no more resistance? Or do we see it as something which is always there, but I can cope? Or do we see it as something I can lean into, I can engage with? And if talking about the edge of our practice, there's a metaphor I've always found very useful here, and I think it's from Joko, and that's our edge of a practice as like the edge of a knife or the edge of a blade. Not a sharp blade, but I'll come back to that. Can I lean into that? It's uncomfortable. The natural temptation is to move away, but can I lean into that edge and see how it feels? Where is that edge? What is that edge? What's the edge of my practice now and now, or this year, or at this point in my practice life? What's the edge of my practice? Let's get back to resistance for a minute. Resistance sounds bad. It's kind of like friction, grating. If we think about the word we use for suffering, dukkha, it's actually related to that kind of friction of a chariot wheel around a hub. It doesn't quite fit, grates a bit, gets hot, doesn't flow smoothly. Naturally, a bit of grease, we want it spinning nicely. Surely that's a better life. But then we've just been doing kin hin, we've just been walking. What enables us to walk? What's the resistance of the ground? No resistance? It's like a spacewalk. I can't move, I can't do anything, and that's before I think about the resistance within my own body that's setting up. Nothing happens without resistance. Nothing moves without resistance. This isn't a defect. This isn't a problem. This is the nature of practice. This is the nature of being alive. Walking, one foot after another, pressing into the ground, feeling the ground pressing back. That's our practice. And this changes over time. In the early years, well, simply actually feeling this body, actually recognizing the myriad of tiny sensations, all this feeling that my actual body is generating here and now, the feelings of my knee or my foot pressing into the cushion, exactly how, inflected by the texture of my sock, the way the bones are sitting, the way the muscles are holding them. So much, infinitely much. Beginning to really become aware of this, well, that's years of practice, and let alone before I get on, come from the other end. My thoughts. Actually beginning to pay attention to the flow of my thoughts, just as I'm sitting. Thinking, not thinking. This is why I'm not trying to blot anything out. I'm not trying to make anything go away. I'm merely being with my thoughts as I experience them, arising, dispersing, one after another, maybe several at once, maybe one that grabs hold, maybe one that just passes by. And we have practices, naming thoughts and just observing. Again, years of practice. And that's before we get into the middle ground. I used to think that feeling was such a useless word. Feeling, it covers so much, it's so wide. And yet actually, it's a wonderful word. Feeling goes all the way from the direct experiencing in my body to my emotions, to the way my emotions affect my thinking, my decision making, my actions. Feelings, it really points to this unity of mind and body, this infinite interconnection and interplay between them. Wonderful word, feelings. So beginning to just become aware of my feelings, that's years of practice. And yet, of course, this is only the very beginning. If I can become aware of these, pretty quickly, I become aware that some of these I like. Some of these I really don't like. Some of these I wish would hang around. Some of these I wish would really go away and preferably not come back. So we can talk about the point of our practice where really that edge, that leaning in, becomes about the difficulty, becomes about the uncomfortableness of the uncomfortable thoughts, the uncomfortable feelings. And can I lean in to the edge that those provide? Can I get okay in simply just being with them? And when we talk about Joko's wonderful phrase, a bigger container, is my container, my ocean that I am, big enough to allow me to lean in to my discomfort, to my uncomfortable feelings? And again, just beginning to be able to do that changes so much. It changes how I experience them. It changes how I think about myself. And I get back to this bluntness of the edge, this gentle leaning in. I don't want the edge to be too sharp because, I'm going to cut myself. It's going to be blood. I don't want that. And so this leaning in always has to be done gently, with kindness, finding the edge, just resting on it, remaining. If it feels a bit too sharp, back off. Come back. Lean into it again. See, if it's too sharp, then, I'll go into overwhelm. I might trigger. I might find I'm revisiting some trauma, and that's not what we're after. We're not into the business of big experience here, and that's one of the big problems with big experiences like enlightenment experiences. At one level, they can appear to resolve everything in a sea of bliss, whilst at another level, they're allowing, resurfacing trauma. It's complicated. Joko uses the metaphor of a dam. We've got the waters pressing against the dam wall. Big flood. And a catastrophic flood is always going to cause problems. In a sense, we're much better. Gentle, leaning in. Steady release. Slowly, working through. Again, years. And of course, all of these things to an extent are going on at once. It's not a question, I have to do that, and I have to do that, and I have to do that. But we find that the focus changes. We find that the weight changes quite naturally, quite spontaneously, if we're open to where our practice is taking us, and we're not filling our head with bad ideas like, I shouldn't be thinking anything, or practice is just about being blissful, or whatever, or just, if I were doing it properly, I wouldn't be feeling like this. No, we just return, come back, lean in, gently. Now, in a sense, this can all sound a bit like therapy. And, the fact is, if we do this work, pretty much, in some ways, quite a lot of the time, we're going to end up feeling, frankly, better. Better about ourselves, better about the world. But that's not really the point. And again, come back to those fundamental fantasies. Is better in that sense going to be about eliminating the resistance, about there being nothing to push against, about there being no edge? Oh, I'm there now. I'll just sit here for eternity. Is that really what I'm after? And that's where, again, the idea which we keep coming back to, the idea of no self, oneness. And again, right back to those big experiences. I saw it all. I am one with the world. And as Barry says, how do you feel now? Dreadful. I'm not one anymore. I'm just this guy again. No. That's not what it's about at all. It's not about finding something. It's not about being something. keep using this term, non-separation, but then also beginning this Buddhist verb, selfing, the way that we actually are a self, as a process, not as a thing. How am I becoming the self that I am in this moment, and this moment, and this moment? And we stress that that's always about relationship. And relationship is non-separation. And that works at so many different levels. And again, this is not a kind of knowing that. I can know that I can ride a bicycle. I can know all the parts of a bicycle and name them. I can even take a bike apart and put it back together again. I can learn all the winners of the Tour de France for the last 100 years. But that's not the same as actually riding a bike. Being able to experience that fluid mind-body balance that means that I don't crash all the time, I don't fall off. It's an entirely different kind of activity. And so when I say relational, and when I say experience our selfing, I mean just that. Not as some theoretical idea or construct, but just as I'm aware of the sensations of this body, the sensations, the thoughts in this mind, the kind of systems of feeling that connect this all up. Aware of how I am being this self that I am in this moment, and this moment, and this moment. Not separate. Actually, let's borrow another couple of Joko's images. She uses the image of just a bucket of ice cubes for this idea of a kind of non-relational self. Sticking together, bouncing off each other, knocking bits off here and there, hard, inflexible, crystalline, separate. And she talks about our practice melting us. We become softer. We become slushier. We move differently in relation to each other. We mix, we blur. And her other wonderful image of just the whirlpool in the river. That we're just this, not a separate thing. Just a little process which we can isolate and say, oh yeah, this is me. This is me now. Within a flow. So in a sense, this experiencing differently, and again, saying experiencing myself as the self that I am, but experiencing myself as this world, as this little, in the flow of river. And in the river of world that I am, there is this little whirlpool, which is, the kind of localization of me in this instant. Oh, and this instant. But the fact is, one, unity, is so appealing. One's perfect. One's complete. Surely if I achieve one, I don't have to struggle anymore. I don't have to do any of this stuff. And in fact, we can sort of find one in our practice. And actually that's... Well, where's the edge? Where's the resistance? Where's movement, life? That's actually the depth of my practice. Not necessarily permanent, not total, I'm sure. I can still derive much benefit from it, but, the edge, the life has gone out of it. And There are people, many people, been sitting for 10, 20, 30 years and they're happy. And they're good with their practice. And it's all great. Now that's why Barry has returned to using koans working with students, because Joko, effectively said, no, you're just dissociating, you're just losing yourself in koan study, or the temptation is there so strongly. Yeah, we can do these stories, we can learn. Oh yeah, fine. But is that going to make a difference to your life? And you come back with, and how's your relationship with your mother right now? Life koans, real koans. But actually, if we do get too comfortable with our practice, or even in the way that we think that that's where practice goes, koans can, they can be useful. They can tell us. Like a couple of weeks ago, Dogen Svan reminding us about the way we look for separation the whole time. We look for, oh yes, there's me and there's the world. And actually, no, that's not the way it is. I'm part of this process. Point us back to it. Koans, if we're going to use them intelligently, can form a nice edge to our practice, but anything can potentially be that edge. What's bugging me right now? Or what am I not thinking about? Or what would fix it? What would really make that difference? And that's always an invitation to examine our relationship with things, because these are important things, It could be this relationship, this job, this qualification, this future. What's my relationship with that? I'm not going to disappear to a monastery and spend the next 40 years practicing and not have to worry about any of this stuff. This is my life. These are my real koans to play with. These are what always forms the edge of my practice, but we're not always aware of it as that. So where is the edge of my practice right now? Where's the life in it? What am I feeling I have to lean into? Feel that resistance, that discomfort, but still feel the joy and ease. And I guess one important aspect of that for me is, giving a talk here every week. That's a discipline. It's a demand. It lets me play with my paranoia, my passions, my shame, my caring, all of that stuff, again and again and again. That's what our practice is. That's part of my practice right here, right now. But what's the edge of your practice?